wind whispered through the towering pines as Daniel parked his car at the edge of the small wooded town of Furvale. A nerdy young man with a camera in hand, he had come to this remote corner of Washington state in search of an adventure. Legends of Bigfoot, or Sasquatch as the locals called it, had lured him to this mystical place. Daniel stepped out of the car, his heart pounding with excitement and trepidation. The town, surrounded by dense forests, had an eerie ambiance that sent shivers down his spine. As he walked along the rustic streets, he couldn't help but notice the faded photographs of Bigfoot plastered on the windows of shops and cafes. Entering a local diner, he found himself surrounded by curious eyes. The townsfolk sensed his purpose and were eager to share their encounters with the legendary creature. They spoke of eerie howls piercing the night, strange footprints appearing in the mud, and glimpses of a towering figure lurking in the shadows. One old man leaned closer, his voice trembling. "Son, if you want to see the Sasquatch, you need to head deep into the woods. That's where they dwell." Their tales ignited Daniel's imagination. He eagerly listened, jotting down notes in his journal. With directions and warnings echoing in his mind, he made his way to the outskirts of town where the dense forest awaited him. The sun cast long shadows as Daniel ventured deeper into the wilderness. The once familiar sounds of civilization faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. He pressed on, the camera hanging from his neck capturing his every step. As evening approached, a sense of unease settled over him. The air grew heavy, and the forest seemed to close in around him. Shadows danced in the fading light, and the sound of rustling leaves played tricks on his imagination. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated through the dense forest, chilling Daniel to the core. He stumbled backward, his heart pounding against his ribcage. There it was! The figure before him loomed larger and more imposing by the second, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. Fear coursed through Daniel's veins as he clumsily grabbed his camera, hastily snapping a few photos before realizing the lens cap was still in place. The creature continued his approach straight for Daniel, who managed to take a few photos before his flight impulse kicked in and he spun around and ran from the beast as fast as he could. As he tore down the wooded path, he stopped dead in his tracks when he saw a second Bigfoot ahead of him. 2 Bigfoots? He then turned to his right only to see 2 more creatures also bearing down on him. Realized he was not facing a single Bigfoot but multiple creatures emerging from the shadows like ghostly specters. Fear overwhelmed Daniel as they closed in, their presence suffocating. He stumbled backward, desperately searching for an escape route, but it was too late. The creatures circled him, their massive forms casting long, intimidating shadows. His mind raced as panic set in. Should he run? Fight back? None of his options seemed viable as the creatures closed in, their heavy footfalls shaking the ground beneath him. Instinct took over, and with a surge of adrenaline, Daniel turned and sprinted through the tangled underbrush. Branches slapped against his face, leaving stinging welts as he plunged deeper into the forest. His heart hammered in his chest, the rhythmic thud echoing in his ears. He dared not look back, his only focus on putting distance between himself and the relentless pursuit. Worn out from running, Daniel's only hope was to hide. He looked around and saw a huge fallen redwood with a hollowed-out interior. Daniel crawled inside and prayed that the creatures wouldn't find him. An hour passed, and it had been some time since he heard the last of that beast's howls. He crawled out carefully of his hiding place and peeked in all directions. Now rested, he began sprinting his way back toward town. Finally, Daniel burst into a small clearing, his lungs burning and legs trembling. He collapsed onto the mossy ground, gasping for air. It was then he had heard a strange sound, a mix of grunts and laughter, echoing from a spot further ahead. Curiosity mingled with exhaustion as he peered through the undergrowth, trying to make some sense of what he was hearing. To his astonishment, he saw a group of Bigfoots gathered in a circle, but smoking cigarettes and shotgunning beers. The reality of the situation washed over him, replacing fear with confusion and frustration. These were not supernatural creatures. They were men, perpetuating the legend for their own amusement. One of the men finally removed his costume head, revealing a grinning face. Recognition flickered in Daniel's mind. He had seen this man before, lurking among the townsfolk. Anger filled his voice as he stepped forward, confronting the group. "What is the meaning of this?" he shouted, his voice laced with indignation. "Why would you terrorize me like that?" The men exchanged uneasy glances, their amusement giving way to guilt. The one who had removed his costume head stepped forward, his shoulders slumped. We just wanted to keep the legend alive," he muttered, his voice tinged with regret. "We didn't mean any harm." Daniel's anger softened as he looked into the man's eyes. Seeing the remorse there, he realized that their intentions, although misguided, had not been malicious. They were ordinary people caught up in the allure of the myth. "The Sasquatch has always captured people's imagination," Daniel said, his voice more measured now. "But perpetuating a deception doesn't honor the true magic of these woods. It only diminishes the wonder they hold." The men nodded, their heads bowed in acknowledgement. A sense of understanding passed between them, bridging the gap of fear and frustration. They had all been seekers drawn to the unknown, each searching for their own form of discovery. The guy from the diner spoke next. "The six of us don't do this often. We just knew you were going to take photos, so we thought one more time wouldn't hurt." Daniel looked at the men, all with their headpieces off except for one. He did a quick head count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6... Wait, 7? Suddenly everyone turned to look at the one Bigfoot who hadn't removed his headpiece yet. "Hey, you're not one of us!" The colossal beast raised his arms and let out a terrifying howl. The 6 fake Sasquatches panicked and screamed and scurried off in all directions. Daniel was too petrified to move. Bigfoot approached Daniel, and he reached again for his camera and shakily snapped off a few photos. But the lens cap, still being in place once again, thwarted his efforts for that once-in-a-lifetime, life-changing photo. Now standing directly in front of Daniel, the terrifying Sasquatch towered over him. Bigfoot reached out, an arm and a hand above his head. Daniel, a statue about to get crushed, and then the creature instead patted Daniel lightly on his head. Daniel fainted dead away, falling straight back to the ground, lights out. Bigfoot grinned, turned, and went on his merry way back to the forest. Upon waking, Daniel left the forest, his heart heavy but hopeful. The townsmen would dismantle their elaborate ruse, but the mystery of the Sasquatch would endure, shrouded in the secrets of the forest. As he made his way back to Furvale, he realized the significance of his encounters. The true mystery of the Sasquatch would live on, not through deception, but through the power of belief, awe, and respect for the wonders of nature. From that day forward, Daniel shared his story with others, but he conveniently left out the part about the impersonators. He understood the importance of preserving the legend and the magic it held, and every time he ventured into the woods, he couldn't help but wonder if he would catch another glimpse of the elusive Bigfoot, the guardian of the wilderness. There's only one thing that's even scarier than that story. That would be not watching another video like this one.